What's up, Internet? This is Rambling Josh, and today I want to talk a little bit about World of Warcraft Patch 4.3. So, if World of Warcraft isn't something that you're interested in hearing anything about, I suggest you hit the back button. Anyways, so for a while now, we've been getting a little bit of a trickle of information concerning Patch 4.3, but a couple days ago, there was a big, I don't know what you'd call it, just this giant deluge of information coming out of everywhere. I guess a bunch of media outlets and stuff got the opportunity to interview Blizzard a while back, but the information on patch 4.3 had an NDA on it, and that NDA ended this Monday. So all of the information got released at once, and Blizzard's been releasing a lot of information themselves as well. So I thought I would talk a little bit about it, kind of give my reactions and my thoughts and stuff like that. The first thing I want to talk about is actually a little bit interesting because the information for this actually came out before Monday. I believe it was on the Escapist that it was originally posted, and it was an interview they did that where Blizzard officially announced that the next legendary weapon would in fact be a dagger for rogues. But after this was posted on the Escapist, it was removed like 20 minutes later, and no one really knew why. Well, I guess it's kind of apparent now that there was an NDA on that information, and they accidentally posted it early. I imagine that interview is probably back online now. But anyways, so yeah, the next legendary is in fact a dagger for rogues. But now that we've learned a little bit more about it, it turns out that there's a lot more to it. So, originally, I myself, as well as probably every non-rogue in existence, was pretty disappointed by the fact that this legendary was for one class, and not to mention the fact that it's a dagger. I mean, doesn't that kind of screw over combat rogues? I don't know, maybe they want to use it in their offhand or something, but that's kind of lame. But the more I heard about this legendary, the more I was kind of, even though I'm not a rogue, it kind of sounds really cool. I mean, not that I've ever had a class that was suited for a legendary anyways, but that's beside the point. So, basically, where should I start? I guess the first thing to point out is the fact that not only is it one dagger, but it's actually a set of daggers. There's two of them. So, by obtaining this legendary, you fill out both your main hand and your offhand slot, which is pretty cool. I'm sure a lot of old school rogues were very frustrated with the Warglaze of Azeroth, which were kind of terrible legendaries to begin with. Not terrible as in, they were bad, but like their stats were good, but everything else about them was terrible. But anyways, basically what Blizzard's decided to do with these legendary daggers is just make them all out like super roguish. And I think that's really cool. I mean, I would love for them to take this and kind of apply that same philosophy to a bunch more items in the future. I mean, I don't know how well that would work with other classes, because with pretty much any non-pure DPS class, you have to kind of dilute the process by necessity, just because every single class has like 2 or 3 different roles that they can do. I mean, I guess they would have the same abilities. But anyways, let me kind of take a step back. So, what they're basically doing is the quest line for this dagger requires you to do a bunch of like the storyline is specifically woven to apply to rogues. There's something about like I guess there's supposed to be like a pure black dragon that was born in a quest line in the Badlands, like an untainted black dragon. And it's not really a good guy or a bad guy or whatever, but it ends up contacting the rogue somehow. And the quest line that the rogue has to end up doing involves a whole bunch of kind of using their shady abilities. Like, I guess they referenced stealth and pickpocket, and I think someone mentioned something about, what's it called? Not slow fall, but safe fall? Whatever it is that reduces the falling damage you take. I think that's really cool, making good use of the rogue's abilities in this questline, just because the questline itself is so, like, rogue-centric. And really, I mean, I kind of tend to think that that's something that raiding is kind of missing. And of course, that's by necessity, because a lot of times in raids, you don't really get to use the full scope of your abilities. And the classes that do get to use those abilities, I think, tend to be among the more fun ones. I mean, that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about healing on my paladin lately, is the fact that I tend to feel like I get a really good use out of a wide variety of my abilities. But in general, like, they can't really design raid encounters or dungeon encounters to really take advantage of the full scope of abilities, because like they have 10 classes, 31 specs, but that also means that it's completely impossible for you to have every single spec accounted for. And at the same time, every encounter has to be just as beatable for a group of like 25 druids as it is for a group of like 2 warriors, 17 rogues, and 6 healers, or 6 priests, or something like that. So you don't really get that feeling of, you know, I'm using my class abilities. And even if they did do that, it's usually a very, very bad idea. Anyone who raided Naxxramas 25 and didn't happen to have 7,000 priests on their roster probably knows the feeling. So anyways, beyond the rogue daggers, there has been a bunch of information released about the 5-mans. There are 3 new 5-mans coming out, and they are all Caverns of Time instances. I guess people have said in the past that they were big fans of Caverns of Time instances in general, so they just decided to make them all Caverns of Time instances. In fact, I think even the new raid, the entrance is in the Caverns of Time. They don't even have that many portals, though. Well, whatever. I guess they're just gonna have to add more portals. But anyways, so kind of like the final 5-mans from Wrath of the Lich King, the new 5-mans kind of involve a story that kind of ramps up to the final dungeon. And it all starts off with something I'm pretty sure that's not been done before in Warcraft. Maybe not even like in the lore, I don't know. I haven't read all the books or anything. But the first dungeon is actually a look into the future. And it's basically taking a look at what Azeroth is going to look like if Deathwing manages to succeed. And I think that's pretty cool, because like I said, all these Caverns of Time stuff has always been going back to the past, which is pretty cool in its own, because I love being able to like directly interact with all these kind of legendary moments from lore. But I think there's also a really cool, kind of really dark tone that they can achieve by saying, you know, this is what everything looks like if you screw up, so don't screw up. And everything's, you know, like dark and the world's all corrupted, and I think I saw a screenshot of like even Deathwing is dead. He's like impaled on the top of Wormrest Temple, and that's just really kind of gruesome. And there's all this like corruption spewing out of him or whatever. And one of the bosses that I read is supposed to be like echoes of past people. You can fight like Jaina and Sylvanas, and I could probably take a look here. Let's see. Yeah, Jaina, Sylvanas, Tyrande, and Bane. I'm not even sure who Bane is. Oh, right, Bane. He's... what's his face? Karen's son. So, anyways, I think that's pretty neat. I mean, it doesn't really tie too closely into the story. It's just kind of a really cool concept in my mind. And the second on the second 5-man we have to deal with is the Well of Eternity, which is of course dealing with the War of the Ancients, which is a very, well, maybe not very, but it's a fairly well-known story. It's kind of the first meeting with the Burning Legion 10,000 years ago, and that makes me pretty excited. I read the War of the Ancients trilogy a while back, and I really enjoyed reading it. So the concept is we got to go back in time to the Well of Eternity, and we have to steal the dragon's soul and bring it back to use it to defeat Deathwing. And we got to do stuff. Let's see. The bosses we got to fight are Perotharn, which I want to say I remember the name, but it doesn't really ring a bell. We got to fight Ashara, which I don't really think fits with the timeline, but I'm sure they can make it work. And finally, we got to fight Manaroth and Verathan, and that's really interesting, I think. The big, what are they called? Oh geez, what are they called? Not Pit Lords. That's what they're called. Pit Lords I think are pretty cool. They're just like big, huge, epic guys. I think it'd be really awesome to fight a Pit Lord in a 5-man. And the whole concept of just being a part of the War of the Ancients is something people have kind of speculated they would do for a while, just because they also did the Battle for Mount Hyjal, which is kind of the same concept in a way. It's just a different point in time. Well, I guess that would cover kind of both of the conflicts with the Burning Legion. Just War of the Ancients is a lot older. But, you know, being a part of that whole, that key part in the lore is just really interesting in my mind. And I've actually got a couple of interesting screenshots of this, of, I guess, new models for Ysera and Alexstrasza. I guess they decided it was time that they stopped looking exactly like every other red and green dragon. And after the Well of Eternity, we have... this one's still, I think, technically considered a Caverns of Time instance, but it's called the Hour of Twilight. And this one takes place in the present. And I think that whole kind of concept of, you know, here's the future, here's the past, now here's the present. It's like the conflict with Deathwing spans across like all of eternity and all of Azeroth too, but I mean, I'll get to that later. So anyways, the Hour of Eternity is probably the simplest concept of them all. It's not really kind of grandiose time travel and stuff. You basically just have to escort Thrall to Wormrest Temple, and I guess you traverse the Dragon Blight, and it's all like corrupted and covered in tentacles and stuff. Which, not the most interesting concept, but I mean, I guess it's kind of a necessary step of the process. I'm sure there'll be lots of interesting story stuff that happens there. Probably the most interesting thing to me is that it says in the official dungeon preview for the Hour of Twilight that the final boss of this instance is Archbishop Benedictus. And that has me intrigued. Anyone who's played Alliance probably knows that Archbishop Benedictus is the Archbishop of Stormwind City. He's kind of the head of the Church of Light. And, you know, as someone who has a level 85 priest, you know, I've talked to him many times throughout my travels to get some training and stuff. I guess you could literally say that Archbishop Benedictus trained my priest. Now I have to go kill him. I guess he's secretly been serving the Twilight's Hammer all these years. Which could have some pretty interesting ramifications. You know, this super important holy... Well, I guess he's not super important, but he's, you know... He's a recognizable face. He's been, you know, a holy dude all this time, but apparently not quite so holy, because the old gods have been whispering in his ear too. Or, I don't know if it's the old gods or Deathwing that's been whispering in his ear, but whatever. So after the events at the Hour of Twilight, we managed to get Thrall and the Dragon Soul all up to Wormrest Temple, and then starts the raid. The raid is simply called Dragon Soul, which is a little bit of an odd name. I mean, it kind of makes sense on one level, but usually the name of a raid is based on the location, not like, hey, there's this weapon you're using to do stuff. Let's name the raid after that. I mean, they didn't name Icecrown Citadel, they didn't name Shadowborn. I don't know, it's just kind of strange. Although I suppose the Dragon Soul is a pretty significant weapon and stuff. So the whole concept of the Dragon Soul raid is there's supposed to be a series of, I guess, 6 bosses that no one really cares about. Because they just kind of... they're the forward guard or whatever. They're all like attacking Wormrest Temple, trying to stop you from using the Dragon Soul on Deathwing and all that stuff. And none of them are super interesting. They're all kind of faceless things. A couple of them actually are faceless, I think. Like those old god servant thingies. But anyways, the 7th and the 8th boss are both Deathwing, which is something they've hinted at for a while now. They've kind of straight up come out and said that Deathwing was an encounter that would span multiple encounters. I kind of hoped that meant more than 2, but I guess you take what you can get. So the first encounter is the one that they've kind of hinted at in the past as well, and that's that in this encounter the raid is flying on Deathwing's back, and the whole concept is supposed to be that you are trying to take out Deathwing's armor, because of course Deathwing is wearing this giant set of Elementium armor to not really to protect him, but to kind of hold the corruption and the dark energies from that was like overflowing from using the Dragon Soul, which I guess was called the Demon Soul at that point, but that's neither here nor there. So he's got like this giant set of armor that it's designed to keep stuff in, to kind of almost like hold himself together, but at the same time, because he's wearing it, we can't really get at him. So I guess the idea is supposed to be that we're flying on Deathwing's back, and we're trying to detach his armor to kind of give us, I guess the idea is supposed to be we're trying to open up a hole big enough for Thrall to like shoot at him with the Dragon Soul with, to kind of take him down. And as you detach plates of armor, there's like corrupted stuff and magma and all this coming out of his body that you have to fight off, and Deathwing is doing like barrel rolls and stuff to trying to detach you. That seems kind of interesting. I think they could do some really interesting mechanics with this fight, because it's very unique. And I guess you're supposed to be like flying all over Azeroth for this fight as well. So it should be a pretty cinematic fight if you actually have any free time to look at the background. But that's all that we really know about it so far. And so, once Thrall brings down Deathwing, he plunges into the Maelstrom, and that starts the final encounter, fight number 8. I guess the official name that they've given this is Corrupted Deathwing or something like that. I guess he's been weakened, and the corruption has kind of started to take hold of him and change him. So there's all these like tentacles and stuff, because all of the old gods have tentacles. And I guess in this fight, it kind of takes place in a bunch of different places. Not like all over Azeroth, like when you were flying on his back, but it starts off. I guess the idea of this fight is supposed to be that Deathwing is so big that even after he's been taken down, like, you can't really take him on head on. So it starts off, you're just like fighting a tentacle, and then you like fly over somewhere else and you're fighting one of his claws or something. So you have to fight like one piece of him at a time, which could be pretty neat and really epic. I mean, the whole Deathwing encounter sounds super epic. But at the same time, I kind of do get the feeling of like, okay, so why doesn't he just breathe fire at you? I mean, it would kind of make sense when you're on his back, but when you're fighting like bits and pieces of him, like, what's the rest of his body doing while you're attacking like his right pinky? Is he just sitting there? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I'm really interested in seeing what this fight ends up looking like, because it definitely sounds like the most epic encounter that World of Warcraft has ever seen. And outside of, well, no, I guess not outside of the rating, but the next thing I should probably talk about is the fact that they have said that they are going to implement a third tier of rating. Not tier, but difficulty, like an easy mode. They've announced in the past that they're releasing a raid finder, much like the dungeon finder, where you just group up with a bunch of random people from other servers and stuff, and it kind of fits you together, and you have to try and take out the bad guys. But needless to say, you know, grouping with 25 random people isn't going to be so effective, and you would basically stand no chance against any normal raid encounter. So they decide to add a easy mode, which is something that people have suggested for a long time that they do. Something that's easier for people to do, that doesn't really necessitate that the content gets nerfed like months after it's being released, because that kind of tends to upset people. But I'll get to that in a little bit. So I think that's pretty interesting. I'm actually pretty interested in trying out easy mode for a few reasons. I mean, one, of course, there's loot from it, which is kind of below. I guess it's supposed to be in between the level of the new 5-man loot and the normal level of Dragon Soul loot. So I had these numbers worked out earlier. If I had to guess, I would say that the new 5-mans would have like 3.7 or a 3.83 or 3.82 level loot or something like that. And that the normal mode Dragon Soul loot would be, I think it was 391. So if I had to guess, I would say that the easy mode Dragon Soul loot would be like 387 or 388 or something like that. Purely speculation based on, you know, item levels from previous tiers and stuff, but it seems something like that seems pretty likely. I'm interested in just seeing, you know, how well the function works, and just seeing if you can actually use it to get all the way through the instance and actually see all the encounters. If for no other reason than because I do think it would help you learn the encounters. And what I think would be really interesting is if you could do like you can do with the Dungeon Finder and like pre-make your own group and then put yourself in the Dungeon Finder, because I'd kind of like to play around with the easy mode and do it with people that I know. And they haven't really come out and said that you can do that yet. They've also said that the random dungeon finder or raid finder would only be for 25-man raids. So that actually has me kind of concerned, because I don't really like 25-mans that much. I really like 10-mans. I always really have. But they haven't really said that there's going to be a 10-man easy mode, which I would think would be... I mean, it kind of makes sense as far as the raid finder goes, because it's easier to make a balanced 25-man than it is to make a balanced 10-man. But I don't know. Whatever. And so let's see, what else have they got for 4.3 coming up? They've got the Darkmoon Faire, which a lot of people are kind of skeptical about, a lot of people don't care about, but personally, I'm really looking forward to it. I guess the Darkmoon Faire is they're kind of rebooting the Darkmoon Faire. They're moving it over to an island all of its own, and it's going to be once a month, always in the same place. And instead of just being a place where people go to turn in decks and get their trinket, and then never go to ever again, they're turning it into this giant place where you can do like mini games and stuff. And I guess it's kind of supposed to be a little bit like the Darkmoon Faire was originally, where you do this stuff, you interact with the people in the fair, and you get tickets and stuff. Because originally, with the Darkmoon Faire, a lot of people were really into it, because you could do stuff and get these tickets that would give you actual good gear. But that gear hasn't been relevant since vanilla, so no one's really bothered. But I think even if they just update the rewards, it's interesting. But it looks like they're adding a lot of neat kind of stuff to do there. There's whack-a-mole, there's tonk battles, there's a new Gurubashi arena style, like free-for-all arena thing. And of course no one really knows what this stuff is all going to look like quite yet. But I think it's really interesting, and I'm kind of shamelessly hoping to take advantage of it. I've been kind of half, sort of, kind of, maybe working on the reputations for the Insane for a long time now. And I'm at the point where all I've got left at this point is Ravenhold and Darkmoon Faire. So I'm kind of shamelessly hoping that if I finish off Ravenhold, which I'm not sure how far along I am right now, I'm somewhere through Revered, but just killing stuff until you're at Revered is kind of the easy part. The pickpocketing lockboxes to get yourself through to Exalted is probably the vast majority of the time spent, but that's completely tangential. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that that'll give a good way to get Darkmoon Faire rep, because the thought of trying to collect 7,000 decks to turn in has always been what kind of held me back from going all out and getting that title. But anyways, the Darkmoon Faire looks interesting. But then again, I'm one who actually kind of liked the Argent tournament. But aside from the Darkmoon Faire, there's also, of course, Transmogrification and Void Storage, which is stuff that we've known a lot about up until now. They've already released their official previews of this stuff, but it's in 4.3, so I thought I would talk about it. So Void Storage is pretty much what I thought it would be when I heard the name Void Storage. It's basically just a second bank that you can put BOP items in, basically. I mean, I think you can put anything in it, but it's like you have to pay to deposit and withdraw stuff, so it's not something you want to use frequently like your normal bank. I guess the whole idea is supposed to be it's a place to get all the BOP gear that people have been collecting over the past 6 years and get it out of their bank, so they actually have places in their bank to put stuff. And that's pretty interesting to me because I probably have a good like 60 to 80 BOP items sitting in my bank clogging up the space. So I'm looking forward to moving that somewhere else. Although I'm a little apprehensive about the cost involved with the transactions, but I think that's probably a necessary evil, because if it was just straight up a secondary bank, then I think people would use it as just an extra like 100 bank slots, or I think it's actually supposed to be 80 slots or something like that. And then there is, of course, Transmogrification, which is a somewhat, I want to say controversial, but I think most people like the idea of it. And I pretty much guessed what Transmogrification was myself as well. And Transmogrification is kind of using a concept that a lot of other MMOs have used in the past that WoW's always been kind of hesitant to use. And honestly, I think they're just kind of implementing it now just to kind of throw their subscribers a bone and trying to kind of keep the boat going strong. But that's neither here nor there. So Transmogrification, the idea is that you take an item and you can use that item to change the appearance of your current gear. So basically you can make your current gear look like other gear. So I could take my tier 12 set and make it look like tier 2. And that's pretty interesting. I mean, there's a similar concept in DC Universe Online. There's been plenty of MMOs that use stuff like that, but DCU is one that I personally played, and I really liked the system that they had there. And this Transmogrification is very similar to that system. So that makes me pretty excited, because it means basically that you never have to look like ass ever again. I mean, for the longest time, I mean, I love the way tier 12 looks, but for a while now, I've had almost full tier 12. I'm all like red and orange and fiery and stuff, but I've got the same purpley blue shoulders that I've had for like 8 months or whatever, and it looks pretty bad. So, you know, I would love to be able to transmogrify those into something that looks less terrible. And of course, everyone's been, collecting all their old school gear, mostly tier 2, to be able to transmogrify into, and myself, like every other paladin in existence, is going to be walking around in full judgment the second patch 4.3 comes out. But I want to walk around in judgment. Judgment looks awesome. I mean, people complain that everyone's still going to look the same, and you're not going to be able to tell what kind of gear people have, but I don't know. I think it's kind of a weak argument, honestly. I mean, everyone looks pretty much the same now, but with Transmogrification, it's just going to be a matter of you can at least choose what you look like. I guess the final thing I wanted to talk about isn't really pertaining so much to 4.3, but something that's kind of come about recently, and that's the nerfing of Firelands, which is something that's kind of leading up to 4.3. That's kind of tied into the easy mode that they're adding in for the Dragon Soul raid. And I gotta say, I'm pretty disappointed with the way Blizzard has handled this. Basically, what they're doing is kind of what they did with Tier 11. With Tier 11, they nerfed every encounter across the board, basically so that people who didn't get a chance to clear Tier 11 content got a chance to clear those encounters just to see the content, which is something Blizzard's been really kind of OCD about ever since, well, I want to say ever since the original Naxxramas, which is far and away the worst instance of people not seeing the instances that they implemented, but they didn't really do a much better job in Burning Crusade either. But since Wrath, at least, they've been really OCD about everyone being able to see the encounters. So they nerfed Tier 11. Everyone was all up in arms about it. I personally didn't care. The reason for that was because they nerfed it after Tier 12 came out. Tier 12 was out when they nerfed Tier 11. Tier 11 was already completely irrelevant. There was stuff there to replace it if you want to do the hard stuff. But now, like, 4.3 isn't even on the PTR yet, and they're already nerfing Firelands. And originally, I thought, and they kind of implied that they would be nerfing Firelands kind of sequentially, like they would implement a whole bunch of like scaling nerfs over a period of time. I kind of got visions of like what they did with Ice Crown Citadel, where like they gave you an increasing buff that like started at like 5% and went all the way up to 30% over time. I was kind of hoping for something like that, where they would like nerf the encounters by 5% every week or something like that. But that's not quite what they did. They came out and they basically nerfed every encounter by 15 to 25%. Just straight up, day one. And that kind of pisses me off. For a few reasons. I mean, for one, they nerfed... Not only did they nerf the normal modes, but they nerfed the hard modes too. Which, that's completely retarded if you ask me. I mean, everyone always says, you know, with Tier 11 nerfs, they never nerf the hard modes. But everyone's always said, you know, don't touch the hard modes. People that are still rating the hard modes, they want to be able to do the hard stuff. Don't make the hard stuff easy mode. And that's what they did. And, you know, Firelands is still progression for pretty much everyone that isn't 7 out of 7 heroic already. My guild, I mean, we're a good guild. We're good raiders, but we raid casually. We only raid like 3 to 6 hours a week. And we have maybe like 18 to 20 people that we rotate in on a week-by-week basis, just kind of based on who's available and who best fits the composition that week and whatever. So we don't get a lot of raid time, and we also try to get everyone in, and we don't really extend our lockouts all that much because we want to be able to get those gear from the first encounters for people that maybe didn't get a chance to do them before. So we're only 5 out of 7 normal modes. I think we proved that we can kill Major Domo, but now all these nerfs have kind of hit, and now all of a sudden all the progression that we're doing from now until the end is basically completely irrelevant. It's like, good job, you didn't raid enough. Now all of your future accomplishments are worthless. You didn't raid enough. So even though you probably could have killed Ragnaros if you got the chance to get to him, we're not going to give you that chance. We're just going to nerf him before you even get a chance to get to him. And Blizzard has their reasonings, but I think it's a pretty asinine thing to do. I mean, the only thing I can really think is that they want people to have the gear and be ready for when Deathwing and Dragon Soul come out, so that they can tackle that straight away rather than having to like farm the old raids after it's being released. But I don't know. I mean, on one hand, Dragon Soul is probably going to be one of the best raids that they ever implemented. I mean, Deathwing, of course, is kind of the penultimate of the entire, the entire expansion, even more so than the Lich King was for Wrath of the Lich King. Although we didn't really see a whole lot of Deathwing up until now, but now we're going into Deathwing Overload, or whatever. Oh, I kind of lost my train of thought. All that rambling. But yeah, so, I don't know. I mean, I guess we're going to be able to jump straight into Dragon Soul and Deathwing, but it makes me pretty upset that they kind of screwed I don't think there is anyone that didn't get screwed over by these nerfs, except for those people who are already 7 out of 7, which... Let's take a quick look at WoW progress here. Doop-a-doop-a-doom. Let's see. Heroic Ragnaros. 0.56% of guilds on WoW Progress have killed Heroic Ragnaros. So that's every guild that has not killed Heroic Ragnaros. It says 192 guilds. That means 192 guilds are not being screwed over by these nerfs. That it's just so retarded. Like, there's tens of, maybe hundreds of thousands of guilds that have not killed Heroic Ragnaros that are getting screwed over by it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But anyways, I don't know. I guess I've ranted enough on this, and I kind of run out of things to say, so I guess I'm going to leave it there for today. I will catch you next time on the next episode of Ramblings.